Welcome to Watch, Review, Repeat. This is the podcast where two best friends discuss the latest in film and television, and then do it all over again the following week. My name is Colton Brown. Joining me, as always, is my best friend, Andrew Meadows. So, Andrew, it's been a little while since Hurricane Irma has made her way through the state of Florida and beyond. So, how's everything holding up on your end now?
Well, my area witnessed the eye of Irma, and it came right over us, but it came over us at a Cat 1, which we're very fortunate. It could have been much, much worse. Had a couple down trees. I went without electricity for 3 to 4 days, which was unbearable. I'm going to buy a generator. But all things considered, I had this huge oak tree. It split in half, but it did not fall on the man cave. It did not fall on the house. It fell on a fence, and I can fix a whole lot easier than I can fix a house. So I'm very thankful, and come next year, I'll be much more prepared. But what about you? How did it hit you?
Well, I was fortunate enough, or at least Jacksonville was fortunate enough, that the track for Irma kind of kept shifting towards the west, so we really just got hit by kind of the outer bands of the storm as it passed through our area, and like you said, it was kind of weakened as well by the time it got as north as us. We kind of danced around most of it. There was a lot of flooding, but as far as how it affected me, really only some power flickers the night that the storm hit. I never lost it for any extended period of time, which I was very, very grateful for, and no property damage or anything like that. So as far as how it impacted me, came away pretty unscathed. So yeah, on to a little bit more lighthearted matter. Well, I say a lighthearted matter. Maybe that's not appropriate either. We're covering a very, very interesting movie this week, aren't we? Yes,
Mother, directed by Darren Aronofsky, who happens to be one of my favorite directors. He's a very visionary fella. He definitely covers some. The subject matter is dark, yes, but he takes it to a whole nother level, and it's I don't know. He makes movies in a very unique way, which is they're very polarizing. Once they hit reviews, either you like it or you think it's terrible, which is what I've come to find in the way his movies are received, and that was very much apparent inside the theater when I went to watch it. But I'm excited to cover it. There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to digest with this movie. So we're going to start with our cycle of news. Now we've got a little bit more to cover this week than probably in weeks past. We ended up recording our last episode early because of the impending strike from Irma. So we're actually going to pick right back up where we started last time, and that's in regards to Star Wars Episode 9. So last week we talked about how Colin Trevorrow had exited the picture, and now we know who is taking his spot. It's going to be J.J. Abrams coming back to write and direct Star Wars Episode 9, and now he most recently actually did Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, so this is obviously very familiar territory for both he and Lucasfilm. So I think I had mentioned last week when we talked about potential replacements for Trevorrow, I kind of said that I wasn't big on J.J. coming back, and I think that's because I wanted someone that could bring a fresh take, a unique vision kind of to the table in the way that, from what we've been able to see, what Rian Johnson has done for Episode 8, The Last Jedi. But at the same time, this is familiar territory for both of them, so perhaps there is a comfort knowing that there's probably going to be a singular shared vision here. And I think that probably bodes well. I mean, we've had some issues with Star Wars directors very recently, so it would kind of make sense for Lucasfilm particularly to go back to the well here. And it's also worth considering that JJ doesn't have a blank slate to work with here. He's going to be working with what Rian Johnson has left him. We still don't know what's going to happen in Episode 8.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of fitting that he gets to finish what he started. You know what I mean? You hand the torch over to Rian Johnson. He can kind of fill in the middle, but then JJ comes back in to wrap it back up. And I think that's I would have appreciated a fresh take on everything. Don't get me wrong, but JJ makes good movies. I can't, he makes good movies. It's a safe bet. But it's not a bad bet.
And it's actually probably worth noting, and this isn't obviously contained in the official press release from Lucasfilm or anything, but apparently they did try to get Rian Johnson to come back and do Episode 9, so it really kind of seems like this was their second choice. but their first choice was also very much in the same ballpark in the sense that they were trying to get someone that was already involved, knew what they were doing. So it kind of sounded like Rian Johnson was hesitant to come back, I think, because he's still so involved with the post-production process of episode 8. It kind of seems like it was more important for him to really focus on that and making sure that, episode 8 is up to scratch for exactly what he's trying to do with that, rather than try to shift his energies and shift his mind toward looking at an episode 9. So
we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes. I agree.
And I mean, as the result of the change in directorial views and everything else, they've pushed the release date back to December 20th.
Of 2019, yeah, for episode
2019, 9. Yeah, that's probably an important thing to note.
Yeah, this is a good move. I think December really has kind of become the Star Wars month, at least for me.
Such a wonderful Christmas present.
Yeah, it is that. And then you look at the numbers for The Force Awakens, where it captured not only the biggest opening weekend in what is kind of considered a non-traditional box office month. Usually summer is kind of where your big hits come out, and those are the ones that make all the big bucks typically, and that's still true for the most part. But if anything, Star Wars making so much money in December, and hell, it making so much money in September, like it's really kind of establishing this precedent that you don't need to be restricted to this 4-month period, really. If there's an audience that wants to see things, they don't give a flying fuck when you release them. Like they will show up, day one. Like I said, it's a good move, I think, just because I now associate Star Wars with December, and I think that's smart to keep that trend consistent. But it's also smart because clearly there's been some behind-the-scenes snafus in terms of really kind of getting episode 9 to where they want it to be. So I think this is as much about giving JJ as much time to come in and write basically a new treatment, if nothing else. I mean, I don't know if they're starting from scratch with episode 9 or if they're taking their existing drafts that Trevorrow and company worked on and then just kind of evolving that version, or what's exactly going on with that. That's something we may not know for a long time, if ever. But as I said, again, I think this is more of a move designed to give them as much time to really get this on track as much as possible. So
I tell you what I'm not excited about is who was announced to co-write episode 9 with JJ, and that's Chris Terrio, the famous writer responsible for Batman vs. Superman and upcoming Justice League, which also looks like a pile of shit. So I don't know. I'm not terribly enthused about it, but he did write Argo, and Argo was a very well-made movie, so, I mean, I guess it could go either way.
Yeah. I mean, Argo is a pretty big credit to have, especially when it's something that earned him an Academy Award, so it's hard to give him too much shit, but yeah, I mean, we both saw Batman v Superman. I think he came in later in the process. I don't know, so I don't know if it's entirely fair to blame him for everything in that movie.
Do you think we can blame him for... Martha! Why did you say that name? Why did you say that name? You think he's responsible for that?
You've got to save Martha.
Martha! Why did you say that name?
Can we just do an hour of that, please? I
think we could.
Why did you say that name?
Is your mom Martha? My mom's Martha. Both of our mothers are Martha.
Did we just become best friends? Shit. What? Okay, I totally lost my train of thought. What were we even talking about? Chris Terrio, that's the man. That's the man.
Is he responsible for that? That's the question.
I don't know. I don't know if he's responsible.
Or do you think that's a Zack thing?
I'm willing to stake my reputation on this claim and say that is largely a Zack Snyder invention. Yeah, that's a Zack Snyder thing. It's got to be.
But on to much more, not that Star Wars isn't interesting, but Hellboy. Holy shit.
Yeah, we got our first look at David Harbour as the new and improved Hellboy. This dude looks like a mean motherfucker.
Yes.
I think the first time I saw this picture, I saw it and my first thought was like, that looks like Ron Perlman. How could it still look like Ron Perlman when it's not even freaking Ron Perlman? And then I went back and looked at the actual Ron Perlman version of Hellboy, and I was like, oh, no. That looks like a kiddie version of Hellboy compared to this. And that's not to criticize the quality of those movies. I mean, I think the Hellboy movies are the two that came out, both from Guillermo del Toro, were great. But this looks like a much more sinister version of Hellboy. And I don't think that's going to be reflected in this character. I think that's just the way that they've kind of visually constructed this version of it. I mean, this dude is just freaking jacked. He's got veins popping out.
He's got one hell of a mutton chop going on, though, dude. Look at that hair.
This dude looks intense. I would not want to see this guy in a dark alley.
I would judge a book by. I mean, that's the whole premise with Hellboy, right? Is not everything's what they seem. People are more than just what they are on the surface. But I would be judging this dude if I saw this dude.
If they stay true to the characterization of Hellboy, kind of from the comic books, then this could make for a very interesting juxtaposition where, you know, you've got this guy that looks incredibly evil, and, you know, he's called Hellboy. You know, he's literally from hell, so you know, that would make sense. That's par for the course. But, you know, he's raised in this environment on Earth that kind of makes him this very happy-go-lucky kind of character in a way. So it's a fun dynamic to play with, visually speaking, in terms of how his personality kind of aligns with how he looks. So this looks cool. I'm on board with this. This is coming to us from Neil Marshall. I think he's done a couple of the big episodes on Game of Thrones. I think he did. He did the Battle of Blackwater episode.
Oh, did he really?
And I want to say the Watchers on the Wall. I think that was the season 4, episode 8 or 9. Maybe not. I think it was episode 9. That was kind of the big assault of the wildlings on the wall.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
He's done a couple feature films. I think he did The Descent, I believe, and something I saw a while back that I remember enjoying, and it was just a crazy hodgepodge of different genres, was Doomsday. It came out in 2008, so it's been some time since that came out. But
that's a post-apocalyptic movie, isn't it?
Yeah. And I remember enjoying it back in the day. That said, I don't think I've seen it since it came out back then, so my tastes have presumably evolved somewhat. So I can't actually speak for the quality of it these days, but I recall enjoying the zaniness of it. So.
And the casting is starting to shape up as well. They recast Ed Skrine's character, which was a very good call.
Yeah, we talked about this. I'm not sure. I think probably a couple episodes ago, where Ed Skrein was cast as this character Ben Damio, who in the comics, the Hellboy comics, was a Japanese American character, and Ed Skrein is a very white British man. So there was a lot of backlash to this, understandably. So Ed Skrein, you know, kind of had the foresight. You know what? It's not okay for me to take this role. He pulled out of the part, so they've ended up recasting this part, and it's going to be Daniel Day Kim, who's taken on the role. I think he's probably most notable for people in Hawaii Five-0. He was on that for a few seasons, and then he actually just recently left because he wasn't getting paid as much as his white co-actors. So
Jesus Christ,
you know, it's a seemingly endless stream of bullshit from Hollywood on this front. But at least as far as the Hellboy movie is concerned, they've kind of been forced to take the steps to rectify this. I think it's probably one of those things that, you know, if Ed Skrein doesn't say no, this isn't okay, and leaves, I don't think that anything else gets done with this, but you know, he did. So they at least addressed the issue when it was raised here. So it's something, you know. So hopefully it's an example to follow going forward, but that's probably naive to say. But on this front, you can take any victory you can get. So that's it.
I mean, and speaking of bullshit Hollywood stuff, Patty Jenkins is killing it. She killed it with the original Wonder Woman. They brought her back for the second one. She's doing a fantastic job, and she's. I thought Wonder Woman was great. I'm glad she's back for the second movie.
I'm a little confused by your segue.
My segue is women are often not paid equal to men.
Okay, all right. I know I didn't quite make the link there. I thought you were gonna like. Speaking of Hollywood bullshit, I can't believe they brought Patty Jenkins back for this movie that she did a great job on. How dare they? How dare they? I'm like, huh?
No. Man, women are often paid less and not recognized for their...
Okay. All right. Yeah, I would say that the transition was a little unclear for me. I'm like, wait, where's he taking this? I don't. This is
still working on it. It's only episode 7, you know. So I'm still working on my transitions.
Yeah. Patty Jenkins back on board for Wonder Woman 2. So this, it seems like it took a while for this deal to come together. I think that, I don't know if they were lowballing her or exactly what was happening with this, but it was kind of a no-brainer. Like, hey, someone finally gets a DC movie right, and then why would you not immediately just take a dump truck full of money and drop it on their driveway, you know?
I'd like to make a note from this Variety article that I'm reading.
Uh-huh.
It looks like she is the highest paid female director of all time.
I mean, look
deservingly.
Look at the response to Wonder Woman. Like, there was clearly an audience starving for something like that. So, again, that just highlights, I guess that's kind of what you were saying. It highlights, like, hey, like, what took so long? Like, come on. Seriously? Like, it takes, to get a female-led superhero movie like Wonder Woman that turns out to be good. We've had Catwoman, we've had Elektra, but, when you actually put someone behind the lens that gives a shit, and you put people in front of the lens, too, that also give a shit, like, it's amazing what happens, isn't it?
It's also interesting to note that Wonder Woman grossed $409 million domestically.
Well, that's 409 domestically for its entire box office run, but that's more domestically than anything else in the DC Extended Universe made. I think worldwide it's not as much. But you're thinking about this as a Wonder Woman solo movie compared to, Batman v Superman was basically a Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman movie. At least they marketed it as such. So, that was something that should have made $1 billion easily and somehow didn't. And I say somehow, and it's because of Martha, probably. Or at least that's a small part of it anyway. It's not just Martha. It was a lot of stupid bullshit like Martha that made up the entirety of that movie.
And Suicide Squad had that girl dancing at the end, which was pretty cool.
Yeah. She did a little hula dance for us. It was very nice. Thanks, Cara. Thanks, Cara Delevingne, for your hula dancing abilities. Lending that to the silver screen. Very impressive. Very impressive. So outside of the DC realm, we're gonna dip our toes back into the Blade Runner world. We got another short. So I think, again, a couple weeks ago, I think we had the 2036 Nexus Dawn short film that was kind of like a prequel-ish type short for Blade Runner 2049. And so we got a second one. This one's called
2048, Nowhere to Run.
Yeah, and this one's got Dave Bautista. And what did you think about this one?
That was good. I'm a sucker for what do they call it? Maybe viral marketing. I don't know if this is considered viral marketing or not, but I like it. Nothing gets you going for a movie, more than short films that bring the movie to you. You know what I mean? That set the stage for the movie. And so far we've got what looks like so far two very prominent characters setting the stage. I'd be interested to see if. Do you know that there's supposed to be one more short before the release?
Yes, I believe they announced that it's actually going to be an animated one, if I'm not mistaken. An animated one. Yeah.
All right, well, I'm interested to see what character that one follows. I'm curious to see if it follows, what's his face?
Ryan Gosling?
Yes, I'd be interested to see if it follows him. But I'm very excited. It sets the tone very well. The tone seems similar from the first short to the second short to what the trailer looks like.
Yeah. Well, it's actually the same director. It's Luke Scott as well for that did both of these shorts that we've seen. I think that probably at least accounts for the visual consistency between the shorts.
Yeah. And Dave Bautista kicks some ass, which is cool. You know,
I gotta say, Dave Bautista.
That's a big dude.
Well, yeah. Let's state the obvious. He's a very large man,
and he wears little itty bitty glasses.
It's those are probably normal sized glasses.
No, you think those are normal sized glasses?
Those are probably normal size. They probably look very big on us, but Dave Bautista he's such a large man that they're just little tiny glasses on him. He's. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that Dave Bautista behind his little tiny spectacles, he's got some pretty impressive acting chops. I mean, he started in wrestling, and I think that I read that when he got the role of Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, he broke down in tears because he was just thrilled by it. And you could tell that this is a guy that, even for this little 5-6 minute short, he's putting his heart and soul into this.
And you can see it too. The dude's nailing it. He nailed Drax, too, in the Volume 1, Volume 2. He nails it. I mean, he's a good actor.
Yeah, and I mean, and this is a different shade, very different shade than what we saw of Drax, especially in Volume 2, where they kind of leaned a lot more into the humor side of the character. Yeah, so props to Dave Bautista, because he's
really developing his own career, really.
Yeah, so, speaking of dudes kicking ass, John Wick Chapter 3 has landed a May 17th, 2019 release date.
Give me all the John Wicks. All of them. I'll take them all.
Yeah. You saw Chapter 2, right?
I did.
Yeah. I mean, I love the way that these movies are shot. Like, I guess it's probably one of those things when I guess the Bourne Identity came out, that was the model for all actions. Like, we got to do these quick cut close up shots. And that was the trend for action sequences for like a decade at that point. I hope that John Wick becomes the model.
It's a very good point. Yes, it's much more choreographed.
The way that these scenes are choreographed, it's not. Yeah. It looks so seamless, and I think it's probably something that's hard. It's a lot more difficult, I imagine, than the quick cut action takes, because you can get away with obscuring stuntmen and everything kind of that way. Whereas this, like, you really need to have your actors that know what they're doing. So, you're not going to have good old Finn Jones' Iron Fist pull off something like this, because clearly dude doesn't know what he's doing.
You had to bring him up.
I think we went without mentioning Iron Fist 1 week, so I have to bring him back. He's the resident punching bag for Watch Review Repeat. So, it's got to happen. It's one of those things that has to happen. But he's a good punching bag, and I think he's a good example for how not to do action sequences, in the sense that you need to have people that know what they're doing, or you need to be able to film it or disguise it in a way, or block it in a way that you can get around people not knowing what they're doing. But I mean, this is the John Wick movies, both of them. Keanu Reeves clearly put in some work. In terms of the physicality of the role, in terms of the gunplay that's required for the role, and they're just fucking badass movies.
There was did you ever see that training video of him training for the?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that's what he did to prepare for these roles. Like, he put in the work to make this look believable, and like, it's not only that it looks believable. Like, based on what I saw in that video, like, he knows what he's doing. I mean, obviously he's not using real guns on set. He's not shooting real people, but for all intents and purposes, he might as well be. Yeah, it's like it's not that he doesn't know what he's doing. So, this is cool. I'm excited.
What's so cool is they're not just generic action movies. They're very artistically shot, and not even just the choreographic scenes and stuff. Not just the action scenes, but the colors, the cinematography. The writing, all of it's very good. They're very good movies. You know what I mean?
It's got a very cool world. It's not quite a one-to-one translation of the real world. It's kind of this hyper-realized world. You've got the continental, and there's just a lot of little flourishes and stuff in it that kind of make this world. It's close enough to our reality that it's like, okay, I can relate to this, but there's little bits and pieces here and there, like, okay, that's just bad shit, but I want more. I want to see more of this, and I think that's what I liked about Chapter 2 is it kind of, it took the elements of kind of the weirdness, the secret society type nature from the first one, and really kind of doubled down on that and expanded on it. So I expect the third one to kind of follow the same procedure with that. So
if you haven't seen John Wick 1 or 2 and you like action movies, shit, I don't even necessarily think you gotta like action movies to appreciate it. It's just a really good movie. Watch them. They're excellent.
All right, so on to a little bit more somber news. Harry Dean Stanton passed away, I guess this past Friday, the 15th of September, age 91. So lived a nice full life. Harry Dean Stanton, kind of a big actor. I mean, I think he's one of those guys that I don't think I can think of like one big thing that most people might recognize him for. He's just kind of a character actor. I think that, you show someone a picture of him and they'd be like, oh, that guy. They might not know his name, but this is a guy that's been such a presence in Hollywood for a long time. I'm looking at his IMDb page now, 199 actor credits. Like, that's insane.
Mercy.
So I don't really have a ton to say other than, for me, the biggest role that I can remember him in is the first Alien. I think he's Brett. He's a crew member on the USS Nostromo.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, I didn't know. I had no idea he was in that movie. You're right.
And I just looked at the Seven Psychopaths. He was I think one of the psychopaths in that. I don't know if you saw that. Like I said, I'm looking at his IMDb page. I was like, oh shit, he was in that. Oh shit, he was in that. So, yeah. Obviously, I think I think we're from a younger generation as well. I think that he's probably an actor that probably an older generation would maybe recognize him more for bigger roles. But
the day this fella passed away, customer came into the car lot and said that and we got to talking about movies, and he brought Stanton in. He said, hey, listen, Stanton passed away. I'm like, I'm not familiar with his movies. What has he done? And he listed a few of them. I didn't really recognize the movies, but you bring up Alien, you bring up Seven Psychopaths and stuff, and he was apparently very. And Karen actually brought it up as well. One of the employees at the car lot. So I think you're right. I think it's a result of us being a younger generation, but a lot of people are very familiar with them.
Yeah. So I guess we don't really have a ton to add that hasn't already been kind of said on the internet. But yeah, I mean, it sucks to lose someone that obviously has had such a amazing career in Hollywood. But 91. I mean, that's a full life right there. So
right.
All right. Let's move on to some TV news. Jessica Jones Season 2 has wrapped filming.
Let's do it. I'd probably imagine to be coming out in the fall. When's Jessica Jones coming out? Do you know?
Well, I would say, this is definitely going to be a 2018 release. But I'd say this will probably be early 2018, I would guess. I mean, we should be getting The Punisher by the end of this year. Well, we're definitely getting by the end of this year. They've been coy with kind of releasing the actual date, but November, December, maybe a surprise October release isn't out of the question either. But Punisher should be out by the end of this year, and kind of Jessica Jones should be next up on the docket for all those Marvel Netflix shows. Luke Cage Season 2 is also filming, but I think it's still filming, and that'll probably be mid to late next year, I would say. I mean, it seems like Marvel and Netflix is kind of getting onto a 3-season-a-year kind of track with their shows. Iron Fist is going to film this year. I don't think it started yet. I don't think it's supposed to start until December or so. Yeah, I mean, they're pumping these things out. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Jessica Jones Season 2. We don't think we really know a whole lot about it. I think most everyone's going to be back from Season 1. Even David Tennant's going to be back in some form as Kilgrave.
Presumably flashbacks or something.
Yeah, flashbacks, or maybe still kind of, in her head a little bit. I'm excited about this. I mean, I rewatched Jessica Jones Season 1 after we had our big, long episode about that, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I'm kind of pumped to see more of her. And obviously we got more of her in The Defenders, but I'm excited to kind of go back into the world of Jessica Jones, because where we see her in The Defenders, we kind of see her in the same spot at the end of Season 1, and she kind of goes back to the same spot. So
right.
I think there's a lot of room for them to kind of push this character in different directions, and I don't know what direction that's going to be, but I'm keen to find out. All right. Last bit of television news. I know our audience is like, oh, we just want to hear about Mother.
The fucking Emmys, dude.
Yeah, Emmys happened on Sunday night, the 17th. Didn't seem like there was too many surprises. The Handmaid's Tale just totally dominated.
Yeah, I started it, and all I watched was the pilot. But from the pilot, it seems incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it won Best Drama Series. Veep got Best Comedy Series. I don't believe that's its first win. Big Little Lies over at HBO got Best Limited Series. Like I said, none of these are terribly surprising, but Elizabeth Moss, lead actress in a drama series, Handmaid's Tale. Donald Glover got lead actor in a comedy series for Atlanta, which is awesome. And Atlanta's a great show. I think that's something that I talked about very briefly, kind of in one of our first couple episodes, and so nice to see that being recognized. It seemed like it came out forever ago, but I guess the window for these Emmy nominations is kind of, it's not quite on the calendar year. I mean, Game of Thrones was basically exempt from this year of Emmys because of when it aired. I'm not going to go through the whole list here, but
one worth mentioning, I'd like to mention one.
Okay.
Is Variety talk series Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, which is hysterical.
Yeah, that's well deserved.
Yeah, that one won. I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, I don't see anything in here that seems particularly egregious. There's a lot of things here I haven't seen, or I'm not cut up on, or some variant of that. I know some people are pretty excited to see Black Mirror get a couple awards for San Junipero.
Haven't watched that. Have you seen any of that?
I've not seen all of it. I've seen up through a couple episodes into season 2, and
What's
it's
the premise, real quick? Give me a rundown before we start talking about Mother.
I can't give you a premise for Black Mirror because every episode is self-contained. So
is that right?
Each one has their own premise, and they're all just totally batshit. A lot of it's kind of, it kind of grapples with how technology is affecting society, and kind of, it takes a glimpse at. It's hard to describe.
But each individual episode is its own take on technology and how it's influenced the characters within that episode?
Vaguely. I mean, in somewhat. Yeah, I was looking for a lifeline. I just looked at the Wikipedia page. Centers around dark and satirical themes that examine modern society, particularly with regard to the unanticipated consequences of new technologies.
That sounds pretty intriguing.
Yeah, they're like the ones that I've watched, which I think is probably 5 episodes altogether. Like they're insane, but they're really cool, and each one has its own cast, and they have some ridiculously stacked casts for some of these.
Well, I know. Just looking through the list of Emmy winners, they keep referencing San Junipero.
Yeah, that's from the newest season that just came out, which I haven't seen anything from.
So what is that, a particular episode?
Yeah, that's just a one episode in the season that came out. It's something I want to get around to desperately to kind of loop my way back around through all of Black Mirror.
But without watching the rest of the series, I can hop in and just watch this one Black Mirror episode, and I'll be all right. Yeah,
I mean, you're not going to lose any value. I started with season 1, episode 1, which is a doozy. But if you ever get around to watching that, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Sounds like something I would enjoy, though. I'll certainly.
It's from what I've seen, I would highly recommend it, and it's just something that, for whatever reason, kind of fell by the wayside for me. I think probably because. I could watch an episode and then put it away for 3 months, and then watch another episode, put it away for 3 months. I think kind of the way that it was structured, I ended up watching something else that demanded my attention. But we're getting a little long in the tooth here with our news. But like I said, it's been a little while since we recorded. So
let's talk about Mother, man.
Yeah, let's talk about Mother. Without getting too in depth with it, how would you describe this movie to anyone walking in the door that doesn't know what's going on?
Okay, if you're going in to watch this movie, I'm not like the rest of people. I actually didn't catch any of the trailers or any of the marketing, so I went in kind of blind. I went in knowing who directed it. Now, with that being said, if you're going to see this movie, prepare yourself for anything but a literal movie, because nothing that happens in this movie is literal at all. If you look at it from a literal standpoint, it's just batshit crazy, and it doesn't make any sense, and it's probably not a very good movie. You know what I mean? If you take it at the surface level, you know what I mean?
Yeah, take it at face value. And I think a lot of people did make that mistake based on the way that it was marketed. And I think it's marketed as this home invasion horror movie, and that's. Yeah, that is part of it, yes, but
it's hardly a horror movie. Well, I don't think it was a horror movie. Maybe suspense, maybe thriller at most, but it's most definitely not a horror movie. We covered a horror movie last week, and this is everything but. It's definitely different. It's artistic, and it requires patience, and it requires you to think. And if you don't want that, don't go see it, because you definitely will not enjoy it. It's I don't know. You'll be thinking about the movie far longer after you leave. You know what I mean? You'll catch yourself just dwelling on it after you leave the movie, trying to understand it.
Yeah, well, it gives you a lot to think about.
It does.
It's like you said, if you do walk into this just kind of taking everything literally, it's going to fall flat on its face, and that's just not the way that it's designed. It's deliberately constructed in a manner that alludes to bigger meanings.
I think the word is an allegory. The whole movie's an allegory.
Yeah, definitely. And the allegory, it is laid bare pretty plainly, I would say. But perhaps, there are bits and pieces that may, certain people may pick up on, they may not pick up on, but, I think that's something we can kind of dive into a little bit deeper as we go on later on in our spoiler section. But I mean, this movie works on its own merits, I would say, without even getting into the bigger allegory of it all. I mean, from the beginning, the very beginning, the first scene we get, it immediately keys you into the fact that this is not our world exactly, and so it kind of starts you off on this foot of like, okay, there's some weirdness going on here. I don't know exactly what's going on just yet, potentially, and it really kind of just ramps that up through the entirety of the movie, at least through the first two acts, where there's just a very general sense of unease. It's a very tense experience, at least it was for me. Where
it's incredibly tense. You can cut the tension with a knife. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to watch.
It's one of the most uncomfortable movies I in recent memory that I've watched.
And it's not uncomfortable from graphic. It's not uncomfortable because it's graphic. It's not uncomfortable because of any sort of particular content one way or the other.
That's debatable, but again, spoiler territory.
Not until the end. Right, not until the end, but I mean throughout the whole movie the tension is just so uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's the tension that makes it uncomfortable, because there's just an anticipation of what's coming next. For me, it was kind of just like everything that's happening in here is so off kilter.
And it's wrong. It's just wrong.
Yeah, and it grants you this perspective of Jennifer Lawrence's character, where she's our focal point, so we see basically everything through her lens. And, so we see her responding to basically every stimulus that comes her way. And she's always kind of, she's the recipient of everything, of everything. And most everything that she receives throughout the course of the movie is bad, or something that she doesn't want, or she disagrees with, or she doesn't understand. And so, when we kind of look through her perspective, we were just like, oh, what is happening here? What is happening here? And it said it just makes it I don't think it was a frustrating experience, but it's an uncomfortable one.
Oh, very uncomfortable. And it's very much built into, I would say that it's very much built into 3 different acts? They're very distinguished, and there's a crescendo to the end of each act. And then every act begins decent, but they just end harder and harder and harder, and it's a very well-made movie, though. The cinematography was absolutely bonkers.
It's an Aronofsky movie. If you've seen an Aronofsky movie, walking in, you're going to be in for something. It may not be something that you're going to be on board with, but that you're going to be on board for something that's a work of art. I mean, this guy is a visionary.
Yes.
And it's if nothing else, even if you don't care for what he's going for here, you can see it in the artistry behind this movie, with the technicality, the cinematography of this movie. It's phenomenal, and the acting as well. I mean, you have a pretty Hollywood cast here: Jennifer Lawrence, Javier Bardem, Ed Harris, Michelle Pfeiffer. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty standard Hollywood cast for something that really, for all intents and purposes, is an art house film.
Yes, I'd say that's probably the best way to describe the movie. It's an art house film.
Yeah,
I would honestly, if you wanted prep, I think the best prep for this movie is probably The Fountain. You look at something like some other, Darren Aronofsky movies are going to include The Wrestler, which I think is much more literal. Maybe it's not so literal as much as it is. It's very grounded. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Requiem for a Dream. There's deeper things there, but it's just a much more literal movie. You could even probably preface this movie with Pi, which is a little bit more crazy. Which I think is probably his first movie. But Fountain, he gets a star-studded cast, and it's very art housey, and it's got a good budget, and it's very well made, and it's actually interesting. I went and saw Mother, and then and I actually went and saw it with this girl, and we got she got probably a broader strokes from the movie.
Okay.
And she left in a very bad mood, where I left kind of just dumbfounded, just kind of left in my head, trying to process everything. But we both took away something very different, which I think says volumes about the movie. Where you can go watch this thing and you can kind of take away different aspects from it, which is, I think that makes it a work of art. And she left very angry, and I told her that we need to watch it, or she needs to watch The Fountain to look at a different perspective, and see how he appreciates different views. And it's he's just such an artist, man. Like, I don't know how to describe Darren Aronofsky other than just an artist. He's very good at his craft. And kudos to the director of cinematography as well. I think his name's Matthew Libatique. And another trend in his movies is I noticed from Mother and The Fountain, because I watched those both this past weekend. The cinematography, this guy right here has vision too. The shots are incredible. They take these shots inside this house. Now, normally when you shoot inside a house, at least from what I've seen, usually these shots inside these houses are cut in a way to let you bend around walls or what have you. But the way that this movie shot inside this home, and that's another thing to notice. The whole movie is shot inside this home. They don't leave the home at all.
I mean, it's kind of akin to like a play almost in the way that it's constructed, where
that's right.
It maximizes a small space to tell its story.
Yeah, and the home is almost as much a character as everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And it's man, this movie's so good. But the cinematography stands on its own. The cinematography is absolutely beautiful. The shots are beautiful. The set is beautiful. The whole movie is just astoundingly beautiful. It's a very pretty movie. I don't know how much more we can talk about. The other thing we could talk about is you actually pointed this out, because I could have I didn't think about it. But there's no score in this movie.
Yeah, and that's what's fascinating about it is pretty much every movie I can think of has score, or at least a soundtrack in some respect. And this one is something that they did. There was a version of this movie, in production, or in post production, where they had a traditional score with this, and they said honestly it works better without it.
And that's where the home. Now that I dwell on it,
mm-hmm.
the home provides the atmosphere that a score would provide.
Yeah, I was going to follow up on your point of talking about how the house is a character, and I think that's where it really comes to life, is that they use really everything that happens within this house. They accentuate it to make it into kind of your score, if you will. I mean, the sound design in this movie particularly is really astounding. Everything's kind of got a very wooden structure, so there's a lot of creaking when they're walking up and down stairs, even just walking on the floorboards. It's very heightened, and then just pipes rattling and just various things here and there. This is something that, in a way, it almost demands, if nothing else, a surround sound environment. I mean, obviously,
absolutely,
you're going to get that in a theater, so you're good on that front. But I think even if you're watching this at home, like, you really need to have some sort of surround sound to maximize the viewing experience with this, because
it's very much an experience. This movie is an experience.
Yeah, it is, and like I said, I think that's one aspect particularly that really kind of does play a major factor, and especially with the tension that we talked about so much. I mean, a lot of that is typically built through a score, and when you don't have that traditional score, you have to rely on other factors. So, there's scenes where Jennifer Lawrence's character kind of goes out of focus a little bit, and then all the little sounds in the house just kind of gradually get heightened, and so there's other things that they kind of had to work with to make the sound design work and really kind of play up the tension and the uncomfortable factor. So,
and it's interesting to think about as the movie progresses and the tension increases within each act, the sound of the home changes as well. And it kind of helps push it along, and it kind of helps tell the story of the home, which I probably think is probably a good transition into spoilers.
Sure, let's get into it. Full spoilers for Mother.
What did you get from this movie? What was because you probably did the same thing I did to probably gain perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But when you left that movie, what did you leave with?
A decent amount of confusion. honestly. Some of, I think, what Aronofsky was going for here flew over my head. And I'd say really, having had the ability to kind of fill in the gaps after watching the movie, it's easy to kind of piece together that much of this is a biblical allegory. And that's, I picked up on bits and pieces of that while I watched the movie, but I didn't quite glean the higher meaning I think that he was trying to strive for in making this movie. So I think it's something when if you're talking as soon as I left the theater, and I was still kind of processing it, it was something that I didn't quite know what Aronofsky was trying to achieve. I didn't know, what the higher purpose was for him, but I still enjoyed it on the technical merits. So that's kind of where I was left, was that fuck, like I could tell there was something really good here, but I couldn't quite wrap my head around exactly what that was. So that kind of had to be explained to me a little bit. So I don't know if that makes me a big old dummy. Where did it kind of leave you when you're in your initial reactions?
So there's I picked up on a number of different biblical references.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked up on the first one. If we're in spoiler territory, the first one I picked up on was Cain and Abel.
Right.
That was astoundingly Cain and Abel. It was that I picked up on that immediately. I did not pick up, and I picked up on Javier's character being a biblical God reference,
mm-hmm.
especially in the third act when he became worshipped as a poet and everything else. I picked up on that. I also picked up on Mother's relationship to the home and her devotion to the home, and how the home became destroyed by all the conflicts brought on by Javier. I did pick up on that. But Kelly, the girl I went to see it with, she saw the movie as a tale of love and how disrespected somebody can be when they're in love, and how somebody could be taken advantage of and everything else. And it really conflicted me because there's a lot of that in there. But in the same respects, it's the same story, just told in a broader sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It was interesting to go see the movie with somebody who saw, picked up on things and didn't take it at a literal value and took something else from it. It was actually super intriguing to get that response. But I did pick up on some of the religious allegory there, and I picked up on quite a bit of it. I did not pick up on Adam and Eve. There's a lot of in the fall of humanity. I didn't quite pick up on all that.
Yeah. It sounded like you might have probably picked up on some of the more biblical references than I did, which admittedly I was not raised religious at all, so it's probably not super surprising that some of the stuff would fly over my head because of that. But right. I think that, just kind of from what I have seen, Aronofsky is, he said he used kind of the biblical allegory as a construct for it, but he wasn't just trying to make that one point. There's a very heavy environmental theme that he really plays heavily into, with Mother kind of being Mother Nature, and the house kind of being her earth, and by the end of it, basically everyone tramples on everything and destroys it, and the whole thing gets literally burnt down.
Throughout the whole movie, that's what creates the tension. The whole tension is people coming into this paradise, and she's labored so hard to get it to what it is, and it's a beautiful home and it's perfect, and people come in and just have no respect whatsoever for her space, and it's so incredibly sad, and it makes you, I mean, literally makes you angry, and like I said, I don't know, it's not hard to see why people take it in a literal sense and leave angry at the movie.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me stop you there, because I think that maybe there might be some people listening to this that happen to walk into it based on the marketing that are still kind of puzzling. They're scratching their heads like, the fuck did I just watch? Which is a fair response. It's a very fair response, even if you do know what's going on, but especially if you don't know what's going on. So I think it could be fun for us to kind of, maybe kind of run through the movie and kind of maybe point out exactly kind of with the parallels with the the big allegorical parallels that I think Aronofsky was trying to convey, and just kind of offer our kind of commentary on if you thought that worked or kind of anything along those lines. So. And I kind of mentioned mother being Mother Nature and a broader sense if you're talking about kind of an environmental perspective on it. But, she could also be Mary if we're going from a biblical construct. I don't think that's a one-to-one fit for her character, but I think you could definitely kind of look at her from that. You mentioned that Javier Bardem's character, him, was very much a biblical, God, a Judeo-Christian God, and then Adam and Eve was
the first guest.
Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer's character were Adam and Eve, and then this is something that for me flew over my head. I think you said for you as well, but you think back, there's a scene where a mother walks into the bathroom, and she hears Ed Harris's character coughing, and he's got a wound of some sort, which is if you can kind of tie it into the biblical thing, it's his rib being removed to create Eve.
And then the next day, wife comes in.
The next day, Eve shows up on the doorstep and wanders right in.
And see, I think it's interesting that if you take mother as the Mother Nature and the home as her earth, as the movie progresses, you see what kind of impact, and this is what I took away from it, and literally every other person could take away something different. But what I took away from it is what impact has Christianity wrought on the world? You know what I mean? What kind of impact has it had on the earth?
100%. I mean, It's certainly Aronofsky's perspective on kind of, like you said, we basically get a series of events. We have these characters in play, but then we get this series of events. We have a great flood, the sink coming off the wall, all the guests get flooded out. And then, Javier Bardem's and Jennifer Lawrence's character have the conception that leads to the inspiration to create this great piece of work, which is obviously the Bible, and then they have a son, which is Jesus, and then Jesus gets paraded around with the followers of him, and meets an unfortunate end, to put it mildly.
Yes.
And then the followers of him take part in communion, very literally, and then. You have this fanaticism that creates this, the followers of him, this religion organized around this great work of art that he's constructed, and then we get the greatest hits of humanity fucking up as a result of all this, compressed, and I think it's a technically amazing sequence.
Oh, it's
ridiculous. Because you're still working within the geography of this house. And I kind of read, when someone, I don't remember exactly who, was talking with Aronofsky, and is like, we talked with the idea of kind of artificially making the house bigger to accommodate all this, but we decided that would feel cheap. So everything that we see that happens does technically happen within the space that they constructed for this house. And yeah, I mean, it does shift around on kind of a timeline that isn't quite linear.
It's important to note that not one detail goes unnoticed. So
No.
The shape of the home, I didn't pick up on this, to be clear, but the shape of the home is an octagon, which apparently in the Bible or some other reference, I'm not quite sure where, is a figurative reference to, I believe, rebirth and that sort of thing. Yeah, it's pretty interesting once you start looking into it. And then the loop continues at the end of the movie. And it's just so good, man. I told the person I took to see the movie, I told Kelly that I told her, man, you go watch it again, and it's probably such an incredible experience to watch it. Just it's worth rewatching. I think
it is.
You know what I mean?
Because there's so many layers to this, and and kind of what you had mentioned with what she took away from the movie. Like, she has an extremely valid perspective on it. From what I've seen, Aronofsky says, we weren't trying to go for one viewpoint or one perspective on this. Like, it can impact you in different ways, and there's no real invalid way to kind of look at this. It's obviously he has his ideas for what he was trying to convey and what he was trying to do for himself and making this movie, but it's very understandable that people would react to it in different ways. And I had my reaction walking out the first time where I was kind of, okay, I liked it, but I don't know why I liked it. And then now I look back and I was like, fuck, there's so much there that I do want to go back and explore it, because I think that I would have a profoundly different experience watching it, probably for the better, knowing how much depth has really kind of been sown within the movie. So
it's so good.
It is good. And I guess kind of before we wrap this up, kind of as we wrap this up, this is something I think that was marketed very poorly towards the mass audiences, where I think a lot of people were expecting one thing, and then boom, you get an Aronofsky movie surprise. And it's unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate because I think a lot of people just didn't get the right idea, and I think that the way Aronofsky makes his movies, he's not trying to make it for a mass audience. He's making very personal movies, and some people will get it and like it. Some people will get it and still not like it, and some people it will just fly over their heads, and that's fine too. And they might like it too. Like I said, but when I walked out the first time, I didn't quite get it, but I still liked it. And I think there's anything that for people that really don't know what they're walking into, I think there's certain elements in this movie that could really, really, really rub you the wrong way. Beyond any allegorical things. I mean, this is a movie that is brutal in its depiction of violence kind of toward its central character.
Yeah, I read somewhere that a lot of people thought it was misogynistic.
And did you get that vibe?
No.
Obviously, this isn't a topic that either of us are extremely well equipped to talk about, but did you think that the way Aronofsky constructed this movie was intentionally misogynistic? I mean, because I didn't really get that vibe personally. I mean, it was very mean-spirited towards its main character, but I think that was...
That's the story it's set out to tell.
Yeah, I don't think it was meant to kick her down and say that, she's in the wrong here. Like, I think you're kind of meant to empathize with this character and wonder why the fuck everyone else is doing what they're doing, and I can understand why that would be a tough watch for some people. I don't think it's necessarily misogynistic. I didn't think it was unnecessarily mean-spirited.
It's brutal. It's violent, and it's mean, and it's nobody gives a shit about the main character.
Yeah, and I think it does that to evoke
very deliberate.
A reaction in you, and I think. There's a scene where basically she gets kind of beaten and it's visceral, it's violent, and kind of in the same way that when we talked about that one particular scene in Wind River a few weeks back, like it makes you feel a certain way, and it's meant to do that. It's not glorifying, I wouldn't say.
No,
any
absolutely
aspect
not.
of it. It's just this is the horrors of this certain subject matter, and this is. Sometimes the best way to kind of get to the root of the problem is to show you it and make you feel these things, and in the purpose of serving a greater meaning, I think, overall in terms of the movie itself. So, I was just curious to see. I figured we'd kind of align on our viewpoints as far as that was concerned, but obviously not everyone feels the same way. This thing earned an F cinema score, which I don't know how familiar you are with cinema scores, but it's basically just a way to gauge audience reactions, and it's usually a pretty good way to track word of mouth and potential box office legs for movies. And for something to get an F usually suggests that it's the worst movie ever, or the wrong group of people walked into the theater. And I think that's the latter. Obviously, for this one,
I know that when I went to go see this movie, I saw it. I believe I saw it on Friday. Yeah, I saw it on Friday. Which was the first full day for the movie release. And the theater was I'd say probably a quarter full. It wasn't very full. And I would say a third of that audience they had to be young, or they just had to be, they just didn't know what they were watching. I don't know, but they laughed at stupid shit. And it actually kind of pissed me off a little bit. I was a little irritated about the people I was watching it with. But I guess people just don't know the movie that Aronofsky makes. You know what I mean? Or they didn't want to pay attention to it, or I don't know. I don't know. It's frustrating to watch such a meticulously crafted and technical film and watch it receive such bad scores. It's very frustrating.
Yeah. Well, I guess unless you have anything else to kind of add last minute here, you want to go ahead and assign it a rating based on our famous rating scheme?
This one's hard because it's a polarized movie. You know what I mean? I can understand if you won't like it.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see where you're going to weigh on this one. So, refresher course for everyone. Would we recommend that you watch it in the theater? Would you recommend waiting for the Blu-ray, waiting for Netflix, or waiting until someone pays you to see it? So, where do you land on this?
Me personally, I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. It's very well crafted. It's a very well made movie. I would highly recommend that you experience it in the theater. If you're unsure on whether or not you can appreciate the movie, I fully understand. But wait until you can experience it with the proper sound system required to watch it. You will not receive this movie well if you're just watching it on TV with TV speakers. It's not. I personally feel that it's not meant to be viewed that way, and it's very much an experience that I think is articulated well through a theater, and I think it's well worth your money to go watch it if you can appreciate it, but it's not for everybody.
I more or less agree with you. If I have to, go with one over the other, I would say I think people that know Aronofsky will know what to expect, but I think that, perhaps for our listeners that don't know a thing about Aronofsky or any of his previous works, I would recommend waiting for the Blu-ray on this one. I do agree you really need to experience this in an environment that offers you optimal sound. Even if it's just regular old surround sound. I think that's a must for watching this movie to really kind of get you into it. But I think that this is such a polarizing experience that I wouldn't feel comfortable recommending it on a general level to watch it in the theater.
I think if you're listening to a podcast about movies, I think you could probably enjoy it.
Maybe. Like I said, I think there's probably people that, even if they do kind of grasp the deeper meanings, that may not respond to it, perhaps in the way that we did. So, and I really wouldn't get upset by that. I mean, that I would understand.
I would enjoy hearing other people's opinions about this movie. I think it'd be interesting to receive some feedback from our listeners on what they took away from this movie if they go out and watch it. I'd be interested to see how they took the movie.
Yeah, I agree. If you get any car lot feedback, let me know as well.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that'll probably be pretty telling. I imagine.
It's stupidest movie. I don't fucking understand. I can't believe this got a budget for this movie. I just don't understand. That would probably be car lot feedback. But do a little homework before you go watch it, and I think it'll make a tremendous impact on how you view the movie. Stream or rent or whatever it is that you do, I would say watch some sort of Aronofsky movie, whether it's Black Swan, which is incredible, The Fountain. You could watch Requiem for a Dream if you want to feel really shitty about yourself.
Yeah, that's a tough one to just rattle off as just maybe give it a whirl, see what happens.
He makes a handful of his movies. You will feel very bad about just everything. He's a pretty dark fella.
All right. Well, I think that'll cover it. Let's see what we've been up to lately. So, what have you been up to lately? Watching anything? Playing any video games? Anything on any of the sort? I know you were out of power, obviously, for a few days, which greatly hindered your ability to watch Game of Thrones, if nothing else. But have you been up to anything since power came back?
Yeah, I went and picked up Metroid: Samus Returns. And I've played, I think I'm 5% through the game, so I haven't played a whole lot, but it seems pretty well made. It's pretty fun if you like that kind of video game. I also started The Handmaid's Tale, which, like I told you about before, it's seems like a very well-crafted show. I'm excited to get into episode 2, finish the season. Maybe I might finish that this week. But other than that, I think that's pretty much been about it. I did pick up a couple movies on Blu-ray when I went to Walmart the other day. I picked up Batman and Harley Quinn.
Okay, the animated one.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet. But I picked up Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which I've already seen, but it's worth picking up. And I think that's about all I've been up to. I haven't been up to a whole lot. What about yourself?
Really, the only thing, the only complete experience I've had so far is I caught Logan Lucky.
Oh, how was it?
It's really good, actually. This is something we possibly, we had kind of toyed with the possibility of having it as one of our podcast episodes, but we kind of went in another direction. But it's well worth your time if you want to catch it before it exits theaters. It's really good. I like Steven Soderbergh as a director. He did the Ocean's trilogy, a billion other things. There's such a genuine humor to a lot of, at least for this movie, and the cast in this one really is quite phenomenal at conveying that humor. It's Channing Tatum, who has for me done a complete 180 from when I first saw him. I thought he was a terrible actor, and I think when you let him lean into being humorous, the Jump Street movies particularly were kind of probably the first movies where I was just like, oh, this is he can work as an actor. You need to let him do this, more of this, less of whatever the hell else he does in those crappy rom-coms that he does. So him, Adam Driver, Riley Keough, and freaking Daniel Craig is hilarious in this movie. I mean, he's having so much fun. I loved Daniel Craig in this movie. He's doing this redneck West Virginia Southern accent. It's hilarious. His character's a riot, and all the little bit players in this movie are just an absolute riot. It's about a heist at a NASCAR race, and I'm really enjoying the heist genre lately. I just, I like seeing everything kind of come together, how all the pieces fit together.
Heist movies are always fun, man.
It's a ton of fun. It's hilarious. All the performances are great. And it was something like initially I was like, oh, I don't know if it's kind of mostly set in West Virginia. And I was just like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to love this setting a whole lot, but it's like,
that's my stomping ground, boy. What are you trying to say?
It's basically a southern version of Ocean's 11. So it kind of cranks up the absurdity a little bit more, given the nature of it. Everyone involved's kind of a moron, and I enjoy that.
What are you trying to say? I don't.
Hey man, just stop burning couches, and then I'll stop insulting your grand old state, okay?
Stop watching NASCAR out on the front porch. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe. No, but it's got I'd say a burn after reading kind of vibe to it.
Okay.
Where everyone involves kind of just everyone here's extremely stupid. And it just cranks up the absurdity of all the situations that they're in, and it makes for very, very, very compelling. Makes for a compelling film, and it's got one particular joke that I don't want to spoil, but it involves a series you've been watching, and it's fantastic. So you'll know it when you see it. And I do recommend you see it. I recommend you use your Movie Pass before it exits theaters. So beyond that, I've kind of started a couple things. I started reading Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. I think I'm 5 chapters in, and it's a pretty short book, so I'm hoping to be done with it within a week. And
how is it so far?
It's really cool so far.
Does it deviate a lot from Blade Runner?
It does deviate. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, you could see the inspiration here and there, but it's clear that Blade Runner is not a direct translation. That said, I haven't seen the first Blade Runner in a little while, so I'm going to watch it again after I finish the book and kind of really kind of see elements that carried forward and elements that did not.
That'd be such a good idea. Maybe I could read it. How long is it? Do you know how many pages it is?
I'm reading it on my Kindle. I think it's 200 to 300 pages, somewhere in that ballpark. It's pretty short, which is kind of why I didn't feel too intimidated by reading it, because I'm not good at reading, or at least I'm not good at reading long things in a short span of time. So, but I am enjoying it. I'm surprised by, I don't know why I'm surprised. I mean, obviously it's something that has been pretty renowned, but I'm really kind of taken aback with the prose in it. I mean, it's really well written, and just various little the technologies of the time, like they're just cool. And then at the time that this was written, a lot of these ideas I'm like, like, wow, how did this guy come up with all this shit? Like, it's fascinating. It's really fascinating to read. So yeah, it'd be fun if you did that. And it's worth mentioning, of course, that our friends over at Ink to Film that's the project they're working on right now. That's
a good project.
Is doing Android's Dream of Electric Sheep, talking about the book, and then talking about Blade Runner, and then 2049 when that comes out in a couple weeks' time. So that was the inspiration for me to kind of start pick it up and follow along as they go. They haven't actually released an episode yet for the book, so you have a little bit of time to get on the wagon and catch up with us. So and then last thing that I've been not working on. Last thing I've been playing is Uncharted 4, A Thief's End. I started. So I think I talked last week about how I had beaten Uncharted 3. So I think I'm about 6 chapters into Uncharted 4.
Shit, man, you're moving right along.
And I think this is probably the first game on the PS4 that I've experienced with this level of visual fidelity since I've gotten my PS4 Pro.
Okay.
So I think it's super sampled to 1440p and then, downsampled to 1080p because I'm only using a 1080p screen because,
you're a loser?
I'm a loser. I don't have a 4K TV right now. It's on the list. But, those things are expensive, man. But, this game looks incredible. I mean, it's amazing.
Is that the one that's the last one with Nathan Drake, right?
Yeah, presumably, until they make another one.
What's the new one? There was a new one that came out with a lady, right?
Yeah, that's The Lost Legacy. So that was kind of why I was inspired to go back and play this, because I didn't play Uncharted 4 when it came out. I bought it, but I didn't play it. So I wanted to go back and play this, and then The Lost Legacy is a kind of a DLC follow-up to Uncharted 4, but it doesn't. I think it takes place before it, and it has a different protagonist as well. So yes, this is the one with this is kind of the last one with Nathan Drake as its protagonist. So, but it's really good. It is excellent. I played the multiplayer a little while. I don't think there's much of a user base there, but I actually was surprised at how well the Uncharted gameplay translated to that. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but it's just Uncharted for me has always been such a big single player experience that I don't really. Sure. I kind of just thought of the multiplayer as an afterthought, but it's not something that I'm going to go back to and play. But I was just curious and poked my head in there. I was like, well, this is pretty cool. So that's pretty much it for me. They dropped a demo for Project Octopath Traveler on the Nintendo Switch, which is like a Japanese RPG from Square Enix. It's got like a 16-bit 2D sprites, but it's like 3D rendered backgrounds, I think, and it looks really cool when I saw the trailer for it. So I'm gonna try that. I don't think the full game's supposed to be out until next year sometime, but the trailer I saw and the demo looks pretty cool. So next week, hopefully, I'll have some impressions on kind of what I thought about that, and that's it for me. So wrap this up.
Yeah, that's it for me, man.
All right. Well, thank you. To the listener, the person that is listening to this right now. Thank you for tuning in again. We're at number 7 right now, so we're getting a feel for the format, and so we're very happy to have you along for the ride. If you have any comments or anything, definitely about Mother or even It or anything else we've talked about this week or last week or previous weeks, go ahead and send that to us at watchreviewrepeat@gmail.com. If you need to find any other information on us, check out our website, watchreviewrepeat.com. That's your one-stop shop for everything you need for us: iTunes, Google Play, Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff. Our intro and outro tracks are generously provided to us by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. That track is licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. And I guess that'll pretty much do it for this week. Next week, we're going to be talking Kingsman: The Golden Circle, which I know I'm excited for.
Absolutely.
So that's it for me. Andrew, if you want to take us out, I've got nothing else to add.
Everybody have a good week, and we'll talk next week.